Hey everybody, welcome to Ink and Paint. We are glad to be back, and I'm super happy to be back tonight with my co-host Ashley Jasmer. Ashley, welcome
Hi,
back.
everybody.
Why don't you tell everybody where you've been?
So I just have the most beautiful little peanut. She is a month old and doing great. But yeah, so she came a little bit early and unexpected, but we're all doing great. Mom and baby are happy and healthy and excited to be back on the show because I have really missed everybody.
We've missed you too, and I'm so happy you're back. And so that's our first big piece of news. And our other big piece of news is that we are going to move to Monday nights starting October 11th. So, as we all know, the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World is coming up soon, in like less than 2 weeks, which is insane to me. And so we're going to move to Monday night. So I know Cosmic Read is moving to the first Monday of every month, and we will be this kind of like every other 2 weeks around Cosmic Read starting October 11th. So our next episode is going to be October 11th. You can start watching us Monday nights at 8 p.m. right here on Unplanned Downtime. I think that's going to work out better for everybody on the show. It's going to give all of our Unplanned Downtime viewers more Monday night content. And we're excited to make the move and bring you more of this awesome and fun show every every other Monday night at 8 p.m.
Yes.
Every other.
There
So,
you go.
with that, so because it's the 50th anniversary, tonight's show is talking all about how Walt Disney World has changed over the last 50 years. And so, joining me along with Ashley tonight is the rest of our illustrious panel, as we like to say. So, big warm welcome to Disney Desi
Hi.
and to Stephanie James. Thank you both for joining us.
Hey, everybody.
Yes,
Happy to be here.
So, we're talking tonight about we're leading up to the 50th anniversary. So, we're going to talk about how Disney has changed over 50 years. And like, I feel like that's this massive, insane topic of what's different in Walt Disney World today than it was on October 1st, 1971, because that's just such an insane amount of stuff. It's not even funny. But talking about stuff that's important to us as females, important to us as people, important to us as parts of families, whether it's you and your parents or your siblings or your children, and how all of that is so different now than it was years and years ago. And so, one of the things I kind of want to talk about to start off this show is a little bit about how female roles have changed at Walt Disney World. And one of the big ways I think that's incredibly obvious to all of us is in the cast members, right? Cast members are the magic. We all know that. It's on shirts that probably most, if not all of us own. And so it's interesting because I was talking to a friend of mine who was telling me about some of the ways that cast member roles were incredibly different back in the early days of Walt Disney World, and that there were specific cast member roles that were gender specific. So certain roles within the Walt Disney Company as a cast member were very specific to they would only basically hire a female to fill certain roles or only hire a male to fill certain roles. So, for example, Disney ambassadors were always women. And I think you would see that in the early days, even of the old Walt Disney Presents and Disneyland TV shows where Walt would walk around with a young, attractive woman dressed in, the plaid blazer and the hat. And they were always women. And so there were certain roles, and you might think being an ambassador or a tour guide was a kind of elevated role within the company, but they were always cast as women. And so now we see, so much of that is different. And we fast forward to, just not even a year ago when Josh D'Amaro announces that we have this new inclusion key where things are no longer gender specific. Not only, I think we've gotten far away from the point where cast member roles are no longer gender specific, but now we get to the point where costuming is no longer gender specific, where we're giving people choices around what they can wear as a cast member in a certain role. Appearance is no longer gender specific. Everything from hair, tattoos, jewelry is no longer gender specific. And we're in this place now where I think it's really incredible that people are allowed to be who they are, and it's not defined by what their gender is, but it's a choice they get to make based on who that they feel they are as people. And I think that's such a, for the Walt Disney Company that is so public facing, and that is so, that so many people see, especially so many young children see, that there's such this, it's so impressive to me that we are now in a place where kids can come in and see people who are different than them, and also see people who are the same as them, and seeing them in all kinds of different roles around the Walt Disney Company, and everything, from attractions to, food service, maintenance, executives, everything in between. And I think that's such a great thing to see. And so I wanted to see kind of what your guys' thoughts were around what you see when you come to the parks in terms of cast members. And is that something that you take notice of? Is that something that has impacted you personally? Is that something that has impacted your experience in the parks and how you feel about coming to Disney?
For me, I don't think I've. Oh, go ahead, Stephanie.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I must have a lag. So the Disney name is synonymous with hospitality. And doing just a little bit of research with what you're talking about, the inclusivity key, a lot of the different blogs and different people have commented online how, this is a big deal because Disney means so much in that category that kind of everybody else through the hospitality world takes their cue from Disney. So I think you're right. I think it is a big deal and a big move, and probably one that's a long time in coming. But I kind of feel like, when you're talking about the different costumings and things, they've always been, depending on the location, some of them have always been sort of androgynous, right? So like Frontierland, everyone wears the same thing. Tomorrowland, that kind of thing. But then there's the period dresses in Liberty Square, and probably some of the Main Street confectionery and things like that. I don't know that that will ever necessarily change, and it probably shouldn't because it was to that period. But yeah, I think that it's nice to be able to have those options. I was an entertainment cast member, so I never had an option with what I was putting on, but that was specific to my role. But I think that that's a good thing, that people can come and feel more comfortable, especially in the Florida heat. So sorry, Desi, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, for me growing up, I don't know if I noticed that some roles were just for men or some roles were just for women. But for me personally, it means more to me that the executives are starting to be more female. Like the VPs of all the parks are females now. And to me, that feels empowering. Like, boss lady, we can get there. Even though CEO, I don't, unless I'm missing someone, I don't think they've ever had a female CEO or to that level.
There's never been a CEO that is not a white man. Just like, I will not, that is a clear statement.
Not yet.
A CEO that's not a white man.
Speak out of
You're
turn.
absolutely right.
I couldn't think of any. I didn't want to forget somebody that was from a long time ago that I had somehow forgotten. So, but yeah, no, CEO still not seeing representation there, but at least at the higher up level, it's important for me as a career woman to see women in those leadership positions.
Yeah, so just to kind of run down some of the roster right now within the Walt Disney Company, 3 of the senior vice presidents and 4 executive vice presidents are women. One of the presidents of WDI is a woman. The president of Disney Parks International is a woman. The president of Disneyland Paris is a woman. The senior vice president of Walt Disney World Resorts and Transportation is a woman. And the president of Consumer Products, Games, and Publishing is a woman. And there are plenty of others. There's legal counsel who are women. There are executives within communications and marketing who are women. So it's actually really impressive if you go on the Walt Disney Company website and look at the executive leadership. There's really quite I wouldn't call it a 50-50 balance, but it's not terribly far off of how many women are in leadership within the Walt Disney Company.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it in reality, overall, we're talking essentially 50 years, because back in the 70s they were probably all white men. So in less than 50 years to have made a stride that far where it's almost, if not a 50-50 split, is still really impressive. That's not, when you consider time for women to go to college and things like that and work their way up the corporate ladder, I would consider that still, is it perfect? No, but it's far better than what I would typically expect, especially for a company that was, again, we moved from gender-specific casting roles 50 years ago to now we're here. I think that's a great stride overall, and is definitely positive. As much as we kind of hark on the things that they do wrong, that's definitely a positive.
And to double on that, sorry, Ashley. I was just going to say, to double up on that, Disney has always been pretty good about having women in important roles, maybe not the leadership or management like you're talking about now, but there are plenty of Imagineers and women who are very influential, throughout the company since its inception. So I think it's a trendsetter in that way too.
I think it absolutely is. I think, we all, for as much as it's easy to look at what people are not doing, I think for something as really honestly sort of a cultural and social shift as putting women into leadership roles. If you look back anywhere in this country in, say, the 1950s, women were not in leadership roles. Women were secretaries. Women were underlings in just about every industry. And change takes time. And, just because 50 years might seem like a lot to some people, there's still a lot of people in power today who were in power then, or who were in the workforce then, who learned that that's not necessarily how things work. And so changing those mindsets over time takes a while, and for some people never happens at all. And so I think the fact that Disney's been able to do it, and like Desi talked about, the vice presidents of every single park in Walt Disney World are all women. Like, that's, when I found that out, I was stunned. Like, I had no idea. And I was like, wow, this actually, this is significant. This is groundbreaking in terms of Disney putting people in charge who are, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what background you come from, that they are willing to give roles of power to people who are not necessarily the traditional in terms of what we normally see in leadership roles. And I think that's above and beyond what you see in the average company in America today. I think if you looked at the percentages of women in powerful positions at Walt Disney, it's above and beyond what you would see in most companies of average or of similar or even smaller sizes anywhere in this country.
No, I would
the VP of the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. And to kind of segue, again, you talk about how much they've changed, and especially in Imagineering, I feel like, and, probably a lot has to do with Walt himself, believing in women who would come up with ideas. And, we all know Mary Blair and Alice Davis and, all of them had taken great strides. But, again, like, our own name, the Ink and Paint Department, 50 years ago, and I'm sure a lot of Disney fans have seen that famous letter of the girl who wanted to be an animator, and they said, sorry, you can apply to be in campaign department, and that's all we got for women. Women aren't animators. And so, yeah, for them to have come as far as they have it's a great thing. And I think it's perforated. I think it probably started there, but to see that it's come as far as it has to, all the VPs and everything, and it can only go further. So maybe hopefully when Chapek is ousted, maybe we'll get a woman in charge. Fix some of the stuff that has gone awry.
I had to look up the names, but the VP of the Magic Kingdom, she was previously the VP at Epcot, and that's Melissa, I'm going to butcher her last name, Valaket, I think is how you say it. So yeah, so she's made, I guess maybe it's, I don't know if you would consider that a lateral move in the structure of the company, and there's clearly a lot of different levels above VP. But yeah, I mean, as somebody who has that experience in parks and resorts, I would love to see someone be CEO that has the experience with entertainment and parks and resorts versus marketing and merchandise. So that would be amazing in the future.
That would be... Yeah, you'd think we would have learned from previous mistakes, but clearly not.
Right.
But yeah,
there we go.
Got it?
I was trying to kill my static. I think I did it, but there may have been a little, sorry if there was a momentary lapse there in the process.
But yeah, well, and to kind of segue again, I mean, even just some changes in the parks, one of the ones that springs to mind that was probably one of the most controversial and recent was Red. And we've kind of talked about her change before here on the show, but changing for better or worse. I know everybody kind of has their own opinion about the scene and if it should have been changed and how it was changed, but the fact that they made the change was still pretty significant because, Pirates is considered sacred and untouchable. But they felt it was important enough to go back in and correct something that wasn't exactly.
Yeah. It can't be that sacred and untouchable if they put Jack Sparrow in,
Fair point. Touche.
Well, the best video, Johnny Depp being in there. Yes. The best video is when Johnny Depp actually went to Disneyland,
Yes. Well, and the urban legend was finally proven true.
That's the thing, right? So that's the thing I always wanted. I always say whenever I get into this conversation about Red, because I think as Disney fanatics, we all have encountered people who fall on the side of they never should have changed it and why did they touch it? And so here's the first thing I want to say is this, which is changing the Red scene is not the first time that Disney changed Pirates of the Caribbean to be less objectifying towards women. It is they have made several other changes over the years prior to changing that scene. It used to be that the pirates were chasing the women, and then they made a change so that the women were chasing the pirates. And when that happened, there wasn't a lot of stink. There was one scene where there was
no
pirate,
internet back then.
Well, that's fair. That's
true.
Fair. The internet gives voice to the voiceless for good or for ill. So it wasn't the first time that Disney made that change, right? And the other thing is there is a difference between saying that they should have taken a scene out because it was potentially offensive or problematic versus what they put in was good. And, I think we can, this is the same argument with Splash Mountain, for example. And the argument people use all the time, which is, well, they're going to ruin it. Well, that's one thing. What they do with it in the future is a separate argument from whether or not the thing that exists currently is problematic. And so you can say what they did with the Red scene is not good. I personally agree. I don't like the current scene. I don't think it's great. I don't think I feel like it's forced, and I feel like it's out of sync, out of storyline with the rest of the ride. Personally, it feels abrupt. It feels apropos of nothing. Suddenly, this character shows up, and where did she come from? And she's clearly got a strong personality, but we've never seen her before. We never see her again. What's her deal? I don't understand any of it. But
I think
none of
they
that
are going to give her a movie, aren't they?
I know, which whatever.
Oh, for the love.
Yeah.
The new one. Yeah.
But none of that is an argument, like none of that detracts from the argument that what came before was problematic, because I'm sorry, and again, argument I've had many a time. I, as a female, don't like seeing women being sold as objects. It doesn't matter if it was, buy yourself a wench for a bride. Like, okay, so Disney can be puritanical enough to say that we're not selling you as an object, we're selling you as a wife. But a wife is still an object that can be bought and sold. But it's not just as a female to do with whatever you please. It's got to be a wife. Like Disney was puritanical enough to believe that you have to be a man and wife for whatever thing happens after your purchase.
I was gonna say you could argue that it was like the family-friendly euphemism for what was potentially like the future of what was going to happen to them, but
Can
no,
I say
I completely agree.
Right. And the counter argument is, why can't it be fun? Why can't it be this tongue-in-cheek sort of thing, whatever? And there are, I don't know. And I think it's hard to put all of this in a context where what is funny trumps or doesn't trump is culturally sensitive.
Yeah.
Can I say, Jill?
Why? Oh, go ahead, Stephanie, and then I'll.
So do before Johnny Depp got put in, Jack Sparrow's character was put into the barrel with the pirate sitting in the boat, there was a little girl. I remember that from my childhood. There was a little girl that would pop up and look around. And I'm sure everybody knows the original script for that was actually very, shall we say, I don't know what to say about that. Yes. About him talking about the little girl. And so I think that was correct. I think that was the first really major change to it that was good about not objectifying, children for the most part in that scene. So go ahead, Ashley.
No, I mean, yeah. And I think, but to that point, I think the reason and why red comes up as a common topic of conversation when people start talking about changes for better or for worse is because, to your point, when they took out that scene and they added Jack Sparrow in, right, wrong, or indifferent how you feel about an element from the movie being added in, the way that they did it and the animatronics were done well. And I think this is what it always circles back to with red. Those animatronics, it wasn't, he's there, yes, but he's not overly intrusive. He doesn't detract from the story. You kind of hear them talking about like, where's Jack and things like that. And he's there, but it's not jarring. It feels very seamless. It was done well. It was done purposeful. The animatronics look great overall. Red, on the other hand, has a litany of issues. Again, the scene feels weird. Why are we selling chickens to pirates? Why wouldn't they just take the chickens? Like, it makes no sense. And to me personally, the animatronic looks ridiculous. Like, I don't like her. She seems so out of place and not, like, she doesn't blend in. Again, the way Johnny Depp's animatronics look like they've been there. They fit of the way the other ones look. He blends in. He looks like one of the other pirates. I don't know if they intended for her to like stand out, but they did it wrong. And I think that's why she still gets all the hate and everything that she does. And people say, well, they just should have never changed it. And I don't think it's that people even disagree that the scene was problematic. It's that what they put back in, I mean, for better or worse, it sucks. Like, it's not good. And that's why it stings more. And people wish it would just be what it was, because what it was, even though it was problematic, it fit the ride. It, you know, the ride was seamless. The ride was great overall.
They could have written the script better.
Oh, yeah. They could have written the script better. They could have made her animatronic look better. Like, there's so much. Like, they were so fixated on fixing the problematic scene that they didn't see the forest for the trees. They didn't care. They just wanted it done. They wanted it over with. They wanted it fixed. And I won't say that they didn't care, but they were focused on the wrong part. Change the scene, yes, but I don't know. They went wrong somewhere, and it's very, very wrong. And, and that's, quite frankly, that's what makes me nervous when they announce the changes for Jessica Rabbit in Toontown. Like, what?
That's exactly what I was just going to say.
Why her a detective? Like, okay, like, if the problematic issue is her being kidnapped, or even, like, her state of dress, because let's face it, the dress has always been questionable. Like, it defies the laws of physics how it even stays on her.
She's, like, more gravity-defying than a Barbie doll.
Right? But, like, if that's the issue, just change her outfit. Why are we changing the whole ride to make her a detective? And this is not going to make any sense whatsoever. I mean, in her own way, she's, kind of empowering. Like, she loves Roger because, everybody's like thinks that she's like this dumb bimbo who's just with him for the money or whatever. And it's like, no, she actually cares about him and has a heart and is intelligent and knows what's what and kind of helps save the day. Like, she's, not a perfect character, but she has a lot of depth. And I kind of dig the fact that she, like, embraces her sexuality.
Yeah. Her character actually defies like what she
the stereotype
as. Exactly. And I think that's awesome about her character in the film. And in some ways it's kind of like, I don't know, like the most problematic thing about her. Yeah. It's cheapening it in a way.
Yeah, I get it. If moms are, I can't imagine after God, it's been like 40 years, I guess, now since that movie came out.
Isn't it scary?
No. A little bit, actually, a lot.
Not that anyway.
But again, if the objectionable part is her outfit, just change the blessed outfit. Like, I don't know what else about her in that ride would be objectionable. And it feels like we're swinging the pendulum way too far.
Yeah. Well, and so there's that, right? Like, that's exactly what's happening across the board, is that we're swinging the pendulum too far in the other direction. You could absolutely take Jessica Rabbit, tone it down a little bit so it's not quite so glaringly, overtly sexual, and not really make it look completely different. Just tone it down a little. They don't have to put a paper bag over her. Just,
what if she had like a mink or something just like draped over her shoulders?
Like a boa or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Raise the cleavage line just a little bit. Yeah. Like just a few little
just
tweaks.
Finish the back of the dress. Like,
right. Lower her heels a little bit so they're heels like an actual human woman might actually wear. Like, just a few
lower the
things.
Slit like closer to the knee.
Yeah.
Like, you could
it's
just
not
edit
her
a few
fault she
things.
was drawn that way.
Right? But
and
yeah,
that's
but
the
I
thing,
feel
right?
like
we don't have to go completely in the other direction.
Yeah, and I mean, you want to talk about again with change, and you kind of touched on it a little bit before, but Splash Mountain and changing it to Princess and the Frog. I don't necessarily disagree that Splash Mountain should change because of the problematic, ties that it has. I again, but I feel like we're swinging the pendulum too far, and it creates kind of its own litany of, problems to automatically just retheme it to Princess and the Frog. Why doesn't Tiana rate her own thing? Why do we have to convert something that's already been there?
So, like, have you guys watched Behind the Attraction with Tower of Terror and how Joe Rohde talks about retheming Tower of Terror in Disneyland to Guardians of the Galaxy? And it was this insane, intense process. First of all, it's Joe Rohde. Like, here's the other thing I want to argue about all of this is that, not every attraction that gets rethemed, whether we're talking about the change to the red scene, or we're talking about the changes to the Jungle Cruise, or we're talking about what they're doing with Splash Mountain, most of those projects don't get a Joe Rohde level Imagineer assigned to them to really sit and think about what the physical ride itself is capable of, what the nature of the IP is all about. They don't get that, right? I feel like we're in this place right now where the vast majority of Imagineers are in this place of feeling like hogtied by all of these cultural sensitivity issues, so that they're afraid to be too creative. And so we're put in this place where it's kind of like, what's the safest thing we can possibly do? And that's hard enough when you're talking about a new attraction, but when you're talking about retheming an existing attraction, and especially an existing attraction that has so much emotional attachment, whether it's Jungle Cruise or Splash Mountain or whatever, they're scared. They're all just scared. And you don't have a Joe Rohde who doesn't care about being afraid to take the reins and say, like, this is the thing we need to do. Like, we have, right now we have, the Zach Ridleys of the world who are obsessed with the fact that there are Coca-Cola bottle pieces in the floor of Club Cool, and that's what makes it authentic. And that's great and all, but that's not the idea. That's not, where the revolutionary concept of how we're going to turn this from something that, yes, has some offensive elements that we need to change and make it still feel authentic and real and Disney. And that's what we're missing right now, because everybody's terrified. And so, it's I don't know, we're in this weird pendulum moment, I think, in society, where we know there are certain things out there that are not okay anymore, but everybody's so afraid of almost making it less not okay that they don't know how to make it okay in a way that's still good.
I think that's an excellent
make it okay
point, Jill.
Way, and then you've accidentally upset people over here. And it's like, well, do we just ignore the problem then? But
on Jungle Cruise is a perfect example, like you said, how they just came in and took everything out, and they didn't replace it with anything necessarily. I mean, they did the monkey scene, the chimps, and everything like that, which is great. Probably needed that anyway. But Desi, I know I've heard you speak on this before, being of Pacific Islander descent, right?
Yeah.
So tell me what you said before. I know that you've talked about that.
I don't know anybody who was offended by the Jungle Cruise in my family, or anybody that I know in Hawaii. Nobody was offended by it.
I think that's the beauty of Joe Rohde, what you're talking about, Jill, because he can take the cultural aspects and really do that justice. And he doesn't, it's not cultural appropriation. He's not making fun of it necessarily. It's just, hey, let's attribute this to like it really is in real life, because I think that, it needs to have a lot of this, the most memorable things, the best things that you take away from the parks a lot of times are based in reality, and then they expand upon that and they say what could be from that, and you have this extraordinary adventure, whereas in reality there's not that magic.
Right. And so here's the thing, right? We all talk about this idea that, Walt said, the parks are never done. The parks are always changing. The parks are always evolving. And we see that in so many places. I mean, Carousel of Progress changed, right? When they redid Carousel of Progress in the 90s, all of a sudden John was the one in the kitchen messing up the turkey in the oven. And like that was about like reestablishing what current gender roles are. And nobody freaked out about that. Again, of course, there wasn't the internet upon which people could go crazy and diz Twitter and blah, 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 snip, snip, snip. But at the same time, like it was a change that happened to reflect the current times. And there could be a time period 5 or 10 years from now at which we think that end scene of Carousel of Progress is now offensive for a different reason that maybe we didn't even imagine. And we might need to change it again. But like, I feel like we're in this place now where we have to make something that will never, ever potentially ever be offensive to anyone ever again. And like, that's just not something you can ever predict. And so you need to like evolve and make it acceptable for where we are today without worrying about like, where are we going to be I get worrying about where we're going to be a year or two from now. And I think that's a thing that we can wrap our heads around. But thinking like, okay, this can never be offensive to anyone or like even remotely hurt anyone's feelings ever again, which I'm sorry is just clearly impossible because people get their feelings hurt about everything under the sun. Like,
this is true.
We can't be so worried about like setting off like one tiny little thing 10 years down the road that we're afraid to do anything.
The parks, and again, to a certain extent, again, I understand why, again, Splash has to change, and I'll put that caveat out there because that's where people's brains are going to go when I make the statement. But I feel like the parks in some ways should take a cue from how Disney Plus has kind of addressed some of these issues. Because when Disney Plus was first about to roll out, there were all the rumors that movies like Dumbo and Lady and the Tramp and things like that they were going to edit out certain offensive scenes. That culturally, back when the movies were made, were not necessarily considered, offensive. Like, that's just the way it was. I mean, you could watch Looney Tunes and TV shows and everything, and those stereotypes, right, wrong, or indifferent, we've now since come to understand that that's, wrong and offensive. But back then, they weren't. And so, everybody had the rumors were flying around. They're going to edit these movies or they're not going to load them. And they're Disney classics and, kicked off that whole Twitter storm. And I think, Disney Plus handled it in a way that kind of, I think, towed the line really well, where, they have the disclaimer that, there are some scenes in this movie that depict, cultural depictions that, are offensive. And I forget what the actual disclaimer is because I haven't seen it in so long. But there's that disclaimer out there that's like, yes, we acknowledge that this is, not necessarily okay in today's time. But it also gives the context of when it was put out there that this, it was, and that's why it's in the movie. And, just kind of prepares people to see it and just gives that context versus, trying to go through and edit or, rewrite history that those scenes aren't in the movie. And I think the parks could do well to maybe try to find some kind of happy medium like that. At least for some things. Again, I understand there are other things that should have changed. Again, Red, the little girl, Splash, there are things. But I think that would have been a happy medium for Jungle Cruise. Is to find some kind of disclaimer, for some of the scenes depicted in Jungle Cruise. And without actually having to change the attraction.
Yeah, the disclaimer on Disney Plus, I think, says, we know it's not right now and it wasn't right then. But kind of in the way that it's like, people back then didn't realize, but we know that it still wasn't right back then.
Right.
Well, and
I know that some people get offended, like, oh, saying that it was okay then, it was never okay. No, okay, you're right. It was never okay.
You're right.
But the people back then didn't know better.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's like, we need to acknowledge that, like, as a society, we're constantly evolving. We're constantly
Mm-hmm.
learning new things about what is right, what is wrong, what it means to be human, and what that means, what our impact is on the world around us, on the people around us, on the people like right next door to us. And so I think in some ways I understand that Disney probably takes that farther than most in terms of like being super conscious, right? Because we
Mm-hmm.
have thousands upon thousands of little kids coming through the parks every day, and I don't think anybody like we know a lot more about like psychology today than we did, you know, in 1971, but we still don't understand like when a child sees something what kind of impact it actually has on them. And so like that was sort of a lot of my question about, you know, the arguments about pirates is when a little kid sees a female being sold as an object, like what kind of impact does that have on them? And like as
Mm-hmm.
adults, we can sort of try to rationalize it away as, oh, it's just a joke and they don't really take that seriously. But like, you don't know, you know, think of all the
Yeah.
things that you saw as a child that were like a fleeting passing thing that seriously impacted the way you viewed other human beings, your parents, your siblings, your friends, people around you. Like, you don't know what kind of impact that's going to have on a kid. And so I think it's, for as much as we can say that it's overly cautious, I think I prefer Disney to be overly cautious than to be underly cautious when we have so
Mm-hmm.
many like fragile, impressionable minds in the hands of the Disney parks every single day. Like I think that's important to like I appreciate that Disney is cognizant of the actual power that is and wants to be responsible about it. And I don't think that we should shame Disney for trying to be responsible about that. I challenge Disney to be more creative about that and to be smart
Yeah.
about that and to be like not overreactive about that. But in the grand scheme of things, I think erring on the side of caution is a more socially responsible thing to do.
Right. And well, and I think to circle back again, using pirates as the example, if you do it well, then, you know, people may not like it, but they will accept it. If you do it poorly, that's the only thing that people are going to focus on. And then you've kind of shot yourself in the foot and defeated the purpose. Because again, I would argue that the redhead scene is more famous and popular now than it was before they took it out. Because that's all people want to talk about is
They've
what it
called
used
so
to
much
be
attention
versus
to
what
it.
yeah, you called so much attention. And again, yes, it probably did have an impact on some people, and it probably did. But at the same token, there were a lot of people that it didn't even register to them that it was a problem or even what was going on in the scene, because sometimes the audio was difficult to hear and you couldn't quite, I mean, unless you saw the banner and put it together, but there's, you know, a lot going on. So if you missed it, you missed it. But now you've called attention to it, and it's all people want to talk about because your new scene sucks.
And they
So
do like beating their chests and saying, look, we're so good.
Mhm.
Look how good we are. That they made a Dole Whip just to be like, look, we're inclusive. We gave Red a Dole Whip.
She's a walk around character
like
now. Like she's a
sometimes you have to make it giggle. Why?
They took her way too far.
What?
That's 100% true.
She got a Funko
Because they
Pop
wanted to sell
for crying
pirate.
out loud.
They wanted to sell pirate costumes to little girls. That's why.
Then why can't I still go dress up as a pirate? Why is Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique still alive, and the boys and now little girls can't go dress up as Red and dress up as pirates?
Very good point. Don't know.
It's
Well,
As
so,
somebody who only has little boys, I would like to know that too. Not fair.
It's really not.
So,
And you would think nowadays that like even Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, like that's one change that I'm surprised that they haven't made yet, is even to let little boys dress up as princes. Like
They do.
they do?
They do. They do it.
I stand corrected. Yes. But do they have costumes?
They do.
Could I take
They
my
have
son there and have him dress up as Prince Charming or the Snow Prince or Eric? Because if not, then I still think we have a ways to go.
I don't think
know
they
if
have
you know this,
specific
Ashley, but you
costumes.
had a daughter.
I did. This is true. But I also have I have a son on ice, so eventually this will be a topic of conversation. And hopefully by then, I could take him and she could dress up as her princess, and he could dress up as whomever his favorite prince is, whether that's Philip or Eric or Charming or Snow Prince or whomever. Because I've always kind of wondered that, like, especially like Eric and Aladdin, like, why are there not costumes for them that little boys can dress up as?
Walking around in a Prince Ali, like with the big turban and everything last week. And he looked amazing.
So
and his sister was Jasmine, which, I mean, is still a little weird to me.
That's kind of weird. But we'll let it slide, because I bet they did look adorable.
That costume was clearly handmade, probably by his, well, I'm probably going to be judgmental saying probably by his mother. It could be his father. I don't know.
They could have ordered on
My husband is actually way better at sewing than I am. So. But, like, he looked amazing, and I feel like they're missing an opportunity not having anything for the boys.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least a very limited selection.
Well, they can dress up as Marvel characters. They could dress up as Star Wars characters.
Mm-hmm.
They can dress up as Toy Story characters. Or The Incredibles. And that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why couldn't, if my little boy loved Prince Eric or loved Aladdin, who's the title character of his movie, why can't my kid dress up as Aladdin without me having to go to like Etsy or hand make a costume?
Great point.
And I really argue
what you get from Etsy or handmade is probably going to be better than what you buy at Disney anyway. So it's cheaper. So it's actually probably better to go that route anyway, to be quite honest.
I mean, you should, but if we're talking inclusion, then I feel like those options should be there. But the assumption is that little boys don't want to dress up as princes.
Well,
and I would be wagering to bet that a fair little amount of boys would.
Like, the other thing I appreciate about the whole new... So, like, I wanted to, like, call attention to that, because that's one of the things that I think has happened in Disney, and it happened last year, right? The inclusion key.
September.
Like, I think...
Yes.
September. So I think... So a year ago now, really.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, yeah, it was about...
That is, and like, so I went back and rewatched the video where Disney announced the inclusion key, and the fact that they basically pulled in cast members, and like, this was like a crowdsourced grassroots idea that came from cast members, that like being inclusive and letting cast members be themselves was like a really important aspect of what they wanted and maybe felt like was lacking in what they were doing every day. And that Disney was, and I'm obviously, you know, the video has a marketing spin, and who knows like how much convincing it really took for Disney to, for like upper management to allow this to happen. But nonetheless, like, for me personally, like, this has been a thing that has impacted my experience at Walt Disney World, like, more than I ever anticipated that it would. And so, like, I had an experience where we were at a restaurant and our server had his sleeves rolled up and was displaying a tattoo, like, on his forearm. And we actually made a comment to him about how much we liked his tattoo. And it spurred this whole discussion. He wound up being from New Jersey. I'm from Pennsylvania, which is not super, we were not super far away from each other geographically in previous lives. And he talked about his experiences working in New Jersey. And we had this really amazing conversation. We all, like, we loved this server. He was fantastic. We even like called over the manager to like talk about what a great experience we had with him. And it all started because he was allowed to show off his tattoo now on his arm, which never would have happened before. And like I've had a couple other experiences like that where I've encountered a cast member where I've complimented something about something they can now show about themselves that they didn't used to be able to prior to the inclusion key and all the changes in dress and appearance that came with it, that have impacted, like that have given me incredibly positive experiences with cast members in the parks. And to me, that's what, like, that's so much about what the parks are, is have like, that's so much about what makes a really great experience in the parks, is those positive experiences with cast members that I feel like have just like opened up so much as a result of the inclusion key that never used to be able to be there before. And so, like, aside from all of these other things about like, are we being too cautious, are we going too far, what are we doing, is this really necessary, is what we're changing, like, is the thing we're changing to any better, like, this is a thing where I feel like Disney didn't change the four keys since, 1955, since Disneyland. Like, the keys have been in place since Disneyland opened. And so it took 65 years for Disney to add a fifth key. And this was the fifth key they chose to add. And I feel like that makes such a huge statement, and has been and will continue to be such a positive influence going forward about like your experience of human beings in the parks. And like, that to me, like, aside from all these other, like, we can argue about like, is this a good choice or a bad choice, like, I challenge anybody to tell me that the inclusion key was a bad choice, because I've had nothing but like tremendously elevated experiences as a result of it. Okay, I'll just
challenge
drop
here
on that one then.
I was gonna say I don't have much of a challenge.
The Diffendall rant.
That was the
Inclusion was a bad choice. No,
there you go. Yeah, no. I mean, I can't personally speak to it because I haven't been to the parks to see it yet. But I'm curious in hearing, that it has been, that you've had positive experiences and everything. It does make me happy to know that. I mean, as a person that was a cast member, and, I can remember, especially, in the summertime, people having to wear because it had to be costume approved. So you had to wear, basically the winter long sleeved costume if you had any kind of tattoo or anything on your arms. And I mean, the poor people would just be sweating and sweltering in the Florida heat. And, it makes me happy on that alone, that you're either not having to spend, hours with makeup covering your tattoos so that you don't have to wear the heavy, thick, long sleeve, ridiculous shirt, or, having to wear that shirt and feeling like you're going to die when you're outside in the Florida heat. But yeah, no, I think it's 100% positive.
Cast members, when they're happy, the guests are happy, right? Because they're supposed to go above and beyond anyway. And I think part of the inclusivity key is also those people that have disabilities or are differently abled, and kids with autism and things like this. I have a friend of mine who has 3 children, and each of her kids have a different medical issue. And so she's talking about bringing them for the first time after her daughter has heart surgery next year. And we're talking about the DAS pass, and now that they can actually go, I think it's part of the Genie Plus actually, or Genie rollout, but they can go ahead and schedule that ahead of time, which is huge for families like that. You're not having to go up to the ride or up to the attraction and talk to the cast member. So I think that right there is going to increase guest experience, and in a positive way, impact that positively, just in that inclusivity as well.
Yeah, I will say, like, for as much as we can talk about how, like, guest experience has suffered in certain ways over the last several years, like, even just adding those guest experience teams throughout the park, I think has made a huge difference. We've probably all had the experience of, having to go to guest relations, which is basically one location in the front of the park that has a tremendous line, and you stand there in the heat, and then you finally get inside and the cast members are probably like exhausted and cranky because they've dealt with like 1,000 people who are asking for everything under the sun. And so just even having those guest experience teams spread throughout the park has made a huge difference and has enabled that sort of we don't feel like it's a trek to get to guest relations and we're going to sit there and waste an hour of our time and suffer and whatever. You can go up and ask what you need, and maybe there's a couple people in line in front of you, but like my experience ever having to deal with those guest relations, sort of like the blue umbrellas throughout the park, has always been so positive. And I think it's like for as much as when cast members are happy, they're going to provide better guest service. But at the same time, like the other aspect of it is I think most cast members the vast majority of cast members want to provide good guest service. And when Disney gives them ways in which it's easy for them to do that, it's a win for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I just say real quick. So when I was again entertainment portion of cast member, but and it probably Ashley was the same for you. People would ask me, what is it like working for the Walt Disney Company? And I would say it's about the money, right? Because it really is. Because you're just a number. You're a one in a cog, in a big machinery. Like you really don't matter. But it was when I would go on set, when I would go out on stage and talk to the people and they would have that interaction with me, that was what was a magical for me. That was what was so it brings me back to the parks now as a parent. So that, I think you're right, Jill. I think the cast members really do want to provide a magical experience for the guests as well.
Oh, absolutely they do. But to your point, I mean, nobody, well, I can't say nobody, but the people who do well at Disney and the cast members that you can tell, you have to still realize that it's a job and a company. It's, at the end of the day, it is a job. But you do get to create magic and have those interactions. And when we get to have those interactions, that's what kind of makes it fulfilling and worth it to the cast members. But that's far, they do want to go above and beyond. It is a job, it is a paycheck, but you don't necessarily sign up and stay working at Disney if it's just a paycheck to you. Because you're going to burn out. You're going to throw in the towel at some point. Because there's going to be that guest that asks you for the 15th time what time the 3 o'clock parade is, and you're going to snap. But at the same token, it's far easier to go above and beyond and to have those magical interactions and to be a happy cast member when you're genuinely happy and can be yourself and not have to, worry about getting a point on your record because you're out of uniform, because your Band-Aid fell off that was covering your wrist tattoo and you can't get backstage to get another one. So,
what are the points?
So they had a point system, at least when I worked there. So basically, if you got, I forget what the actual amounts were, but if you were late to work, if you called out, if you had like minor little infractions, kind of like that, there was a point system. And when you got X amount of points, you would get reprimanded, or you could get suspended, or even terminated if you got so many points on your record. And it was kind of just, I feel like, again, because there were so many cast members, it was just kind of their way of keeping track of people. I mean, I think, and it's not, it's not like they were super, super strict about anything. I mean, again, there were some that were just kind of known automatics. Like, again, if you called out the day of your shift or what have you, then that was an automatic point. And, they were very upfront about it. But that was just kind of, and I don't know if you got points necessarily for having a tattoo because I don't have one, but, some form of in trouble for, having your tattoo showing because your Band-Aid fell off. Because that was the way a lot of people would quickly hide. Yeah, would quickly and quietly hide, especially like smaller wrist tattoos or like neck tattoos or something like that, is you just get a bandage and you put a bandage over it.
Well,
downside of that is you sweat, Band-Aids come off.
Precisely.
Or in the extreme cases, if you had sensitive skin, like I did or like other people that I know did, you wear a adhesive Band-Aid for days and days and days at a time and you sweat, and even if it doesn't come off, then your skin's all irritated from the adhesive. And it's just, again, one of those things. Did people do it because they love the company? Yes. Were they happy about it? No. Did it make it harder for them to make the magic because they were miserable? Yes.
Yeah.
And now they can be happier and make more magic. It's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. All right. So we've already been talking about all of this for like an hour. So kind of in the wind down of our episode today, the thing I want to ask you all about is, we've talked about, things that have changed at Disney over the last 50 years. What is the thing that you either are most looking forward to or most think Disney needs to continue working on in, ideally not the next 50 years, but in sort of the short-term future? Like, what are things you see that will, kind of continue this trend of being inclusive and embracing that you would like to see, or things that are coming down the pike that you're most looking forward to? I'll start. I'll call on Ashley first.
Fire Chapek. No.
You stole mine.
But in all seriousness, I think if I were to blue sky something, the thing that I'm kind of most looking forward to and would most be hopeful for the company would be that they get away from and they retire Chapek, they retire Iger. And again, I get it's a publicly traded company. I get that you have to answer to shareholders, but I wish that, and I would hope that going forward, they bring in more people, kind of like Rhodey and everything, that care and actually understand the core of the company. And that, yes, you are beholden to the shareholders, but help the shareholders understand and, kind of toe that line between profitability and keeping and hearkening back to the actual core of what the company was. Yes, Eisner had his problems in the later years, but kind of, more than Eisner than it is now, where, yes, he wanted to be profitable. He understood all of that. And, but at the same time, if Imagineers needed money to do things, he would at least try to give them the money to do what they needed to do, instead of taking 4 years to build a cloned roller coaster, because why, we don't know, but money. So I wish that would be my hope, is that they go back to that, instead of just, throwing things together as cheaply as they can and kind of trading on the name and the reputation and cheapening it, that they go back to, no, we're the best. We have to be the best. We're going to invest in these things and do it right the first time. And they would bring in the people and promote the people that have more of that mentality, versus, no, it's the bottom line. It's just about the money. We don't care. We just want to be profitable for our shareholders and for our bonuses.
Mine was going to be finish Epcot.
Tear down those walls, Mr. Chapek.
Hey, there you go. So I second everything that Ashley just said, though. That was great. And I was going to say the same thing. They need to, like you said, retain and promote the people as a Joe Rhodey. Why they did not, I don't know what happened with his contract or I don't know. So, but they should have done whatever they had to keep him. Kim Irvine, if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
mistaken, isn't she the daughter of Leota Toombs?
Yes, she
And
is.
so okay, so she's an Imagineer. So, those people that have that familial connection to the original
The
people,
history and
keep
yeah.
the history, yes, and the nostalgia and everything. And so let's listen to them. Let's bring in the new blood. I get that, but let's listen to them, and let's take from people who enjoy the parks and understand the parks and know that that's a big moneymaker, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely agree with everything that you just said too.
If anyone has watched the Imagineering story, I find it very funny that basically they were pointing out all of these mistakes were due to the company being too focused on making money and not enough on the experience. And then they started doing better when they focused on the experience. And yet it seems like nobody from Disney has watched this Imagineering story and realized what direction they're going in.
Yeah, I mean, again, you'd think they would have learned their lesson with Paul Pressler and Cynthia Harris and what was done to Disneyland. And clearly we have not, because we are repeating very much the same similar mistakes. But whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it's fine. I just we count down the days. He can't be CEO forever.
Yeah. I mean, he's a robot, so maybe he could.
Oh, God. That is a fair point. I stand corrected.
Runs on
Yeah,
catching.
I think my ask would be for Disney to start, instead of like, I feel like they're focusing on all these things about dollars and data and ROI, but I feel like there are all these things they've left behind or left on the table as a result thereof. So like one of the things that's one of my huge pet peeves is the fact that they keep constantly doing this thing where they undervalue annual pass holders. And yet they don't actually have data on annual pass holder behavior because they don't ever actually really track what we do. And they could, right? They could just ask us to swipe our badges and track, I can say I have an annual pass holder discount and you can put that into the system, but you don't know it's me. And you don't connect my purchases, whether it's in a store or a restaurant, with like who I am and my demographics. And I think there's so much data that's lost there. And it's the same across the board where it's like, you might know what you're selling, but you don't know what you're not selling, right? And we've talked about this where we were talking about this before the show started even, where they've made this shift in merchandise to be super generic and very female focused around, there's so much of the clothes that you can buy are geared towards women. So much of all of the merchandise is stuff that really honestly mostly you're going to expect women to buy. And you go and you try to, your husband or your boyfriend or your son or your father wants to buy something and can't find anything they like in Disney World because they don't make anything for them. And so I feel like there's just all of this stuff that they've kind of turned away from and have ignored about what can broaden the experience for everybody and what's actually happening and what people are actually experiencing today. I think they just think that if they push certain things hard enough and cram it down our throats hard enough, we're going to like it, instead of actually caring what guests want. And I think for a company like Disney World, that is one, they have the opportunity to collect so much data on us. And I'm not saying I want you to like pull this weird psychometric Facebook thing where like, where we are at every moment of the day and sell our data and whatever. But I just feel like in a world of big data where there are so many opportunities, Disney is missing the boat in terms of like utilizing the information they could be collecting to create a better guest experience. And it's not just about, like, at the end of the day, like, your argument actually is about like guest experience, but like at the end of the day, that guest experience is also about dollars, because if you're creating a good guest experience, you're getting people that want to come back, you're getting people that want to spend more money when they're here. And I think instead you're focusing on this lowest common denominator, bare minimum, that's cheapening the experience for everybody, and you're burning it out. And it's a shame, because I mean, this is the way corporate America is structured right now, where the people who are in charge of a company actually are not financially motivated to create long-term success for a company. They're rewarded by creating short-term successes. And so, like, maybe that's the issue. Maybe the Walt Disney Company and the board needs to take a step back and say, our reward structure needs to change. We need to be a forward-thinking enough company. The Walt Disney Company has always been forward-thinking enough to do things differently, to break out of the mold. Maybe the thing we need to do differently next is to change the way this company is structured, so that we're focused more on rewarding these outcomes that are about guest experience, guest satisfaction, because we can collect the data that shows that over the long term, guest satisfaction is actually what makes the company more money in the long term. And while that may not be important to the current CEO, it is important to the shareholders, because the shareholders, I've been a shareholder in the Walt Disney Company for over 30 years. And so to me, like, it's that was probably a good idea.
I think so, to within the last 6 months.
It's not about what's successful in 5 or 10 years. It's what's successful over the long term. That's honestly what the shareholders want, because like, you don't want shareholders to want to sell their shares. You want shareholders to want to hold on to their shares, because you're demonstrating that the company is growing in value year over year. And so, like, that's my ask, is that you look at the reward structure of the company and build it in a way that is oriented towards the long-term growth of the company, and that doesn't reward people for short-term successes that actually sacrifice the long-term success of the company.
Well said.
Very well said.
Different dollar at number 2.
Jill for president.
I mean, that's the problem with being a public company. You're working for each quarter. You're not thinking about the long term.
Precisely.
But it's a shame. And I feel like even, I mean, I guess it was like 15, 16 years ago now. It wasn't that way. You want to talk about differences in the way everything is handled then versus now. Look at the anniversary. I mean, itself. I mean, I was talking to my husband about it at dinner, talking about preparing for the show tonight, and thinking back to everything that they did Disneyland's 50th. I mean, it was granted, it's the first park. I get that. It was the first one to hit 50, big deal. But it was celebrated across all the parks. It was celebrated in Walt Disney World for 18 months, for crying out loud. Disneyland or Disney World got new shows and Cinder Celebration and all of that. It wasn't even their anniversary. And now we have the 50th of Walt Disney World, which, granted, not the first park, but it is the flagship park. And it's, okay, we're getting new fireworks. Cool. Even though fireworks that are very popular just debuted 3 years ago. Could have just done a special tag for those fireworks, but whatever. But it's not even anything that they're trying to tie back to the parks. It's all blessed IP that just came out that nobody has emotional connections to yet. On the 50th, why? And we have no parades. We're not getting a parade, which to me is crazy. And you could have made the COVID argument, but you've brought back fireworks, so I don't want to hear a COVID argument from the Walt Disney Company, because if you really cared, you wouldn't have brought back fireworks. So you can't tell me it's not just money.
Disneyland has parades.
Because Disneyland has parades.
Maybe the long-term request aside, the short-term request is Disney, stop blaming stuff on COVID. Like,
Yes.
you've cut all these corners that you're
So
blaming on
much.
COVID and actually have nothing to do with COVID,
And
because there's so much
but it's
hypocrisy
becoming
and inconsistency.
ridiculous.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is.
So again,
It is.
we have no parades. They've announced no
Trams.
really special events. Yeah, we have no trams.
Trams.
Why don't we have
Perfect
trams?
example.
Why?
Open air.
That's what I
COVID.
want for the
COVID.
50th. That's what I want for the 50th. I want a blessed tram to pick me up again in the parking lot and take me to the TTC.
I have to say,
and I'll
I'm
pretend
so
it's
glad.
the parade. There you go.
I'm so glad I haven't been pregnant during this whole COVID thing, because like 2 months
insane.
before COVID broke out, I would have been miserable.
I'd have died.
Because
I'd have died.
walking from the parking lot to the front of the park is miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you get the car like all the way
untenable.
at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you've done it, hats off to you.
And
I did the parking garage at Springs, and that was far enough.
Yeah.
But like, and okay, so, and again, there's no, Jill and I were talking about this the other day. There's no D23 event. Studios got a D23 event for their 30th anniversary 2 years ago.
Magic Kingdom.
There's not one for Magic Kingdom's 50th? Why? Porque. It's money. You charge money for these things, for people that you've already charged money to, and you can't put that together?
Who are willing to give it to you. Yeah.
Right. That'll clearly hand over fist will give it to you.
And
but we didn't do it just because we don't have to.
Because it's like 6 weeks after the anniversary. So I'm sorry.
That doesn't count. I don't want to hear it. Jill got a really cool, like, what was it? It was the lithograph that you got on Studios 30th?
For Studios. I got a really cool lithograph. I got 3 fast passes, and I got special viewing area for the 30th anniversary ceremonies. And like, it wasn't huge.
Pass?
It wasn't anything big.
No,
it wasn't anything big, but it was still something.
Right. Now it's, excuse me, Lightning Lane. You can get Lightning Lane passes. But I don't, so even talking about the 50th itself, like, it feels like, Disneyland got all of these really great things for their 50th. And I do, as much as we're saying, don't blame things on COVID, I understand that some things may have gotten cut because they didn't know where life would be on October 1st. I get that. But when you brought back fireworks, it did happen. You could have done a special tag or something like that, which actually would have been less expensive than developing a new show. So I don't understand why we've done that. You could have started planning for a parade because, again, you've got fireworks. You can't say that you can't do a parade. We've all seen pictures of the HUD crowded,
Oh man, that first night,
so,
that first night that happily came back, you should have seen that.
Right?
It was like, it was a
shoulder to shoulder.
It was crowded at Christmas when it was just boom, one burst.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And to each their own. Some people still don't feel comfortable staying for fireworks. Okay, fine, but you have fireworks, so you can't say that you can't have a parade. The only reason we don't have a parade is money.
Yep.
And to not have a parade, whether it's a 3:00 parade or a nighttime parade for Disney's 50th, seems atrocious to me. Like, it's embarrassing. Like, again, even my husband, who's not a Disney fan, like, just rattling off the few things that I could off the top of my head remember that even Walt Disney World got for Disneyland's 50th versus what we're getting for Walt Disney World's 50th. He said, and I quote, "Wow, that sounds really lame."
Yep. True story.
It's a true story. And it's all because they're only worried about the short term. Not the fact that people are going to, want to remember the 50th and come back, year over year, and want to come back for the 55th and the 60th and the 75th and all that.
Yeah. That's not the driving factor anymore. So. All right, ladies. Well, before we wrap up, I need to do my due diligence and remind all of our audience out there that, speaking of Walt Disney World's 50th anniversary, in just 10 days, WDWNT will be hosting the Golden Jamboree, which is an amazing 2-day event where we are bringing in all kinds of Imagineers and Disney legends and entertainers. We've got Ron Logan, we've got Don Dorsey, we've got Jim Shull, we've got Wasaloo, aka the band known as Barutica, who used to perform in Animal Kingdom. We've got cast members from the Adventurers Club and Comedy Warehouse at Pleasure Island. We've got Carol, the pianist from Epcot, at the UK Pavilion at Epcot. We've got Piano Rob from Jelly Rolls. We've got all of these great people.
Oh.
And it's a 2-day streaming event. The virtual ticket is only $20. You get access to everything. You can watch it live. You can watch it on demand for up to 30 days. And so we strongly encourage you to join us because it's one of the biggest things that's actually happening at the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World, as far as we know right now, which is only 10 days away. I'm pretty sure that's the case. So come join us. Go to goldenjamboree.com to get your tickets. We're going to have other cool stuff. We're going to have a panel discussion on like the development of resorts over the 50 years of Walt Disney World history. We're going to have a panel discussion about the Country Bears, which I'm super excited about because I think it's going to be really funny. All kinds of good stuff. Hosted by, of course, our very own Tom Corliss, featuring a whole bunch of WDWNT staff, friends, Imagineers, legends, all the people that you're going to want to hear from on the 50th anniversary. So please do come check that out, goldenjamboree.com. The other housekeeping reminder I want to share is, again, Ink and Paint will be moving to Monday nights for our very next show, which is going to be October 11th. So that's like 2.5 weeks. We're going to take an extra half-week break there at the anniversary just to kind of let things shake out, because I think a lot of people are traveling and going to be in the parks. If you are going to be in the parks, we are going to be doing some in-person events on October 1st as well to meet up in the Magic Kingdom. I know that's the first day the enchantment fireworks happen, so all kinds of good stuff. But Ink and Paint, the show that you know and love, will be moving to Monday night starting October 11th at 8 p.m. And so that first episode is going to be a recap of the 50th anniversary. So we're talking all about all of this crazy stuff about what's happening, what's not happening, but we're going to kind of tell you what it was like being there, what we saw, what we loved, what maybe we didn't. Who knows? We'll see. Maybe we love it all. That would be great. In an ideal world, we love it all, and all we do is gush for like an hour about how awesome the 50th was. We shall see. So join us October 11th right here on Unplanned Downtime, 8 p.m. for the next episode of Ink and Paint. And so that's all I have. Closing thoughts. Anybody? Are you excited about the 50th? Stephanie, I know you're going to be here. Desi, you're going to be here. Yep. Ashley, you have a baby, so
and Littles will not.
Yeah.
No, I'm fighting the urge to. My mom and my sister are currently down there. I know. It's as it gets closer, I have a gut feel. There is like a small chance that I'm gonna like text my husband and be like, me and the kid will be back tomorrow. But awesome. I may not get in the park.
Preferable to, but I'm taking the kid, not coming back.
I mean, that's true. That's very true. No, I wouldn't do that to him. But no, I think, I don't know. We'll see what happens as she gets a little bit more manageable day by day. We'll see if I'm brave enough. But chances are I will probably just have to sit and listen to everybody tell me how great it was and watch the live stream. I will be watching the live stream with everybody, though, of Golden Jamboree. So I'll be there in chat and participating. But that will probably be the extent. And sitting here praying I'm wrong about them not doing Diddley for the 50th. Maybe they're just waiting until the absolute last second to announce anything.
That's entirely possible, too. And whatever it is, they'll blame. No matter what happens, they'll blame COVID, so it's fine.
Yes, that's right. That's very true. It's all COVID's fault. It's all COVID's fault.
All right, ladies. Well, thank you so much for this episode. Stephanie, Desi, Ashley, always a wonderful pleasure. I'll see some of you soon and some of you slightly less soon. And thank you all for watching. Special shout out to our WIGS members. Love you, WIGS. patreon.com/WDWNT to join our WIGS program. If you are a WIGS member, you get discounts on Golden Jamboree. We have a Discord channel, so you can all talk to each other during Golden Jamboree events and chat it up. So definitely check that out as well. And yeah, we'll see you next time on October 11th. All right. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.